Hello there, this is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space. And today I am here to review Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather. This is such a short book for how much is in it. It's like under 300 pages. So this is about, no surprise, an archbishop. Latour is his last name, and his friend, Father Joseph Vaillant, which I think is supposed to suggest like valiant. And we will see why as the story goes on. So it's about these two priests who are good friends. They are French Catholics, and they go into New Mexico in like the mid 1800s, minister to the Mexicans and the native populations there, and eventually to like the Ohioans, just America in general on the frontier. It is so interesting. The author must have done so much research to portray it the way she did. So it's like a historical novel, but the plot is basically about the life of the one priest, Bishop Latour. However, in this story, you actually get more about the Bishop Latour's friend, which is very interesting. That's sort of like a summary. If you don't want to get into spoilers, I'm not going to get into too many specifics about the plot here. I feel like usually when people are concerned about spoilers, it's usually about plot spoilers. But the main spoiler of this book is in the title. Archbishop Latour dies. The plot is not what you're going to be reading this book for, or if it is, you're going to be disappointed. I have seen people talking about how boring the plot is. That is missing the point entirely. This is not a plot-driven book. The plot is almost episodic at times. So you're following these priests around, and once in a while they do something really interesting. But really what you're doing is you're getting the picture of these two priests and the people that they're ministering to and the setting that they're ministering in. I didn't know anything about the New Mexico French Catholic missions, so I'm not sure if this is portrayed elsewhere in fiction. It might be, and I think this does a pretty dang good job portraying it. It's just so unique. The New York Times says, "From the richness of her imagination and sympathy, Miss Cather has distilled a very rare piece of literature. It stands out from the very resistance it opposes to classification." And I think that's true. You just have to go into this book knowing that it's going to be sketches of this priest's life and not be disappointed that it's not like wowing you with plot. That's basically my spoiler-free summary. Again, there's not really any spoilers in here. I would say you're probably safe to keep going. I'm just going to tell you what I liked about it mostly. And you can decide from there if you're interested in taking this journey of a lifetime with these two priests. Despite the title, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most unique things about this book, I think, is that we see more of Father Joseph Vaillant probably than Archbishop Latour, because Father Vaillant is the one who's going out into the missions, on the mission field, on the front lines, talking with people and gathering money for his mission, helping people, befriending everyone, and really affecting people's lives. He just has such a huge impact. And actually, it seems like Father Latour, even though he's considered by people around him to be this very spiritual, holy person, he looks up to Father Vaillant as the more successful priest of the two, and he's constantly comparing himself to Father Vaillant. I think that that's because God can use you no matter what your weaknesses are, and that comes through so strongly in here. It's probably fitting that an archbishop is not just like focusing on himself the entire time that he's telling this story, and he literally just puts the focus on someone else. Like, that's very much something that somebody like him would do. There are sections of this book that are told from Father Vaillant's view, and he doesn't seem holy at all. Like, he seems very in touch with earthly needs, and he just enjoys eating, he enjoys talking, he enjoys his wine, he just enjoys people, and he loves people, and he's like a very earthy sort of character, just a very normal guy. I think really what you're seeing here is a picture of two very ordinary humans who are giving their all to serve God, all of their willpower, everything within their abilities, and they're making huge sacrifices before they even get out to their mission fields. That is faith. You put it all out there, you risk everything, you do everything you can, and God will bless you for it. And God blessed their ministries. They reached a lot of people with their ministries, even though they're kind of forgotten. Like I said, nobody talks about these missionaries. They're not like something that I was aware of. And I live in the Western United States, so it's just startling to me that it was like such a new history for me. And that's something else that I really thought was a strength of this book, was how it showed the problems that missionaries faced at this time period, things that you might not think about living in the modern world, like the fact that their families in Europe would write to them about problems in the US that they were not even aware had happened yet because they were so far out in the middle of no communication. Like there was no way to communicate easily with them. You have to think, how far does a letter have to travel in the 1850s to get to somebody in New Mexico? A long, long time. The messenger will probably have to travel on like a mule or something, have the mule stolen, and it might be on a ship that goes down and it'll take months. They were so isolated from everything they loved, including the food. Something that they talked about missing a lot was the food, like the lettuce, the peaches and stuff like that. Food that they were used to getting at home. It was not easily accessible here. So they talk about like gardening, like the kinds of gardens that they do. And they were like, the natural diet around here doesn't include a lot of fruit. Let's encourage everybody to eat some fruit out of our gardens and stuff like that. It's so interesting. Not to mention that not only are we getting the beautiful characterization of these people and their faith and kind of the missions that they had, Willa Cather also paints a really vivid portrait of some of the native populations in this area. And I think that's one of the strengths of the books. It's definitely one of my favorite things about this book. My favorite section of the book details the Acoma Mesa during a rainstorm. Listen to this. It's really just gorgeous. While they were ascending the rock, deafening thunder broke over their heads. Drawing into a deep twist of the stairway, under an overhanging ledge, they watched the water shaken in heavy curtains in the air before them. In a moment, the seam in which they stood was like the channel of a brook. Looking out over the great plain, spotted with mesas and glittering with rain sheets, the bishop saw the distant mountains bright with sunlight. Again, he thought that the first creation morning might have looked like this, when the dry land was first drawn up out of the deep, and all was in confusion. And later, once they reached the top of the mesa, that's where the Indians actually live. They live on top of these mesas in the desert, because that protects them from other attacking nations. The bare stone floor of the town and its deep-worn paths were washed white and clean, and those depressions in the surface, which the Acoma call their cisterns, were full of fresh rainwater. There's a whole story about a corrupt priest that was in this area, and there are stories throughout this book about corrupt priests and how the Archbishop had to deal with them and stuff like that. So that stuff was really interesting too. It's not just like a super rosy painting of what the priests were like. There were problematic priests as well. The miracles of the church seem to me to rest not so much upon faces or voices or healing power coming suddenly near us from afar off, but upon our perceptions being made finer, so that for a moment our eyes can see and our ears can hear what is there about us always. I love this because I always pray that I will be able to see God working around me and that I will be a part of it. And I just feel like that's what Father Latour is saying here. Father Latour kind of sees, you know, like holiness around him and kind of exudes that sense. Whereas Father Villant is more like it says it in here, it has to be a very obvious physical miracle for Father Villant to be like, oh yeah, that's a miracle for sure. But things that Father Latour might say are a miracle, like in the very beginning, he's lost in the desert. It's before he's even reached his mission for the second time, because the first time he went, he was not accepted by the parish. They sent him off to get a letter of recognition from somewhere. I don't even remember where. So he's on his way back. He's dying of thirst. His mule is dying of thirst. And he's just like, everything I see around me is the same. Everything looks like a haystack of rocks, basically, is what he's thinking. Suddenly he sees one that's like shaped exactly like a cross. And he's like, that's a miracle. That's so encouraging. He like sits there in front of the cross and just prays for a while to help get his mind off of his physical situation, which is tormenting him. But he doesn't focus on that anymore. Once he's seen the cross, he can feel like this is part of Christ's suffering, like I'm suffering with Christ, which is right. You know, he's a missionary, so everything that he's suffering right now because of his mission is suffering with Christ. That kind of suffering is blessed heartily in the Bible. Makes me kind of jealous because I do suffer a lot in my life, but not because of Christ. It's just because my body is dumb. But anyways, I love that. So in conclusion, I cannot wait to read more by Willa Cather. I really loved this. Even though the pacing was like super uneven and the plot at times felt just like very episodic and it was basically just the container for the life of a priest. Again, that's not the point. That's fine with me. I get ya. And I just really think that Cather really dexterously portrayed the characters of the priests, the natives, and the setting, and I loved all of that so much. I have my Antonia on my shelves, so maybe I'll read it. I've also said that about Graham Greene though, and I really need to read Graham Greene, so who knows when I'll really get to it, but I really would like to soon. Anyways, let me know down below if you have read any Willa Cather or Death Comes for the Archbishop and what your thoughts were. I'd love to hear about it. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Bye.